Hey folks, welcome to Man Cave Makings with me, Gus. In this video we are talking all about the TIG welding that I do and some of the things that I use, some of the things that I have changed that have really helped me over the last couple of years improve my welding technique. It's not too much of a very technical review, more of the stuff that I've learnt, mostly from my mistakes. Sitting in this bench, burning through a load of plate and just learning through mistakes. So if I can offer up any pieces of advice that will sort of stop you maybe going down the same route as I did, for instance, that is the aim of this video. Anyway, it's going to be a bit of an epic, but I wanted everything that I got in my brain and everything I do just in one video, so there's a one-stop shop of everything that I've got to offer. At the end of the video, I'll tell you about a couple of places to go visit for some more technical stuff, but let's get in it. Okay, so in this first section, I just wanted to kind of clear off some of the sort of basic sort of setups of what things usually go wrong. There's probably about 3 or 4 things that consistently go wrong with that I've learned anyway with TIG welding, and as soon as you recognize it in your own head, you go, oh, of course, that's why my weld looks rubbish or whatever that is. So the first one is torch angle. Now, torch angle is described as the angle of the torch from the 90 in degrees and how far round it goes. The optimum is 90 degrees, but obviously that's not possible at all, in all locations. But 20 or 30 degrees off, you're getting into some dodgy territory there. So sort of anything between the sort of 90 and the sort of 75, something like that, is perfectly acceptable. And the reason why is that on the 90, you're trying to penetrate the thinnest cross-section of material, plus you have the optimum shield gas coverage. So once you start stepping out of that, your cross-section increases, you put more heat in, and you're then going to fan out that weld pool, and it's not going to be a great weld. So torch angle on the 90 is if possible. The next thing up really is arc length. Now, arc length is described as the distance between the end of your tungsten and your base material. Now, that has to be as tight as possible. So that gives you your first major problem. You will dip your tungsten in that weld pool so many times it is just ridiculous. But it is the very first thing you will become proficient at, and that is grinding your tungsten. Without a shadow of a doubt, it is the very first thing that you learn in welding is how to grind a tungsten. It is as simple as that. But the distances involved, so if you get in the UK, if you dig a 10p bit out, stick it on the deck there, that is the distance that you're going to try and maintain. That is the thickness that you need to kind of try and maintain. The US, I think a quarter or something like that is pretty similar. So again, get that down. Holding your torch in a sort of like a pencil or a big crayon or something like that is perfect. And you can practice obviously without this being in your hand, pen, paper or whatever, and get your 10p bit out and practice. That's essentially what you need to do there. So the your arc length is critically important. The further away from that piece it fans out, so your angle increases, and the further away from your weld pool is your weld pool increases, your heat input increases. So for lighter gauge material, you're just going to burn through that, and you want to get it as tight as possible where the amperage is just perfect, and therefore you'll make your weld just nice and perfect. The last thing that kind of consistently goes wrong with, sometimes with my welding as well, is shield gas and shield gas coverage. I'm pretty guilty of this because I've been welding for a while now and I still forget to keep my end of my TIG wire inside that shield gas sort of sphere, if you like. A good way of kind of thinking about it is if you have your cup, keeping your wire inside that cup, because all that's going to do is the shield gas is going to fall out, and you're going to keep your wire inside all the time, so you're covered, if you like. So keeping your dip going inside your cup is really important, and keeping the amount of shield gas going is also critically important. So 12 to 17 sort of litres a minute or something in those kind of in that order is just perfect. Get a gauge on your bottle. Too much, there isn't really, unless it's horsing out and you're kind of blowing your weld pool about, but you're effectively just letting a load of money come out the end of your nozzle. So anything less than those kind of that as a basis, then you're starting going to get a load of porosity into the weld, and it's just you're instantly going to know, because it's all going to be brown and horrible around the edges, or black and tarnished. So if that's happening, check out your shield gas and also your arc length of what you're doing. So those are the sort of three things that consistently go wrong. The fourth thing really is amperages. Amperages are a little bit easier to kind of work with, because you're soon going to know whether you've got too much or too little amps. Too little amps, you're not going to penetrate. Too much amps, you're going to blow through. Pretty easy. But as a rule of thumb, 25 to 30 amps, a half mil of material. So, and that tends to go for the thinnest material that you're trying to weld. So if you're trying to weld dissimilar sizes, go with the thinnest first. So I'm working with a foot pedal, so I jam it to 120 amps and play around with the modulation within the foot pedal, but essentially try and multiply that out. So if you're working with sort of lighter gauge material, 25 to 30 amps is probably where it's at, and all the way up to sort of 2 or 3 mil, banging it out at 150, 160 amps. Yeah, you're going to be there, but you're going to be making multiple passes at that. So those are the sort of 3, maybe 4 things that consistently go wrong, and we'll get on to the next section. Okay, so a quick word on TIG torches. I'm not going to go too in depth with it. There are some much better descriptions out there than I can ever produce, and a lot more technical detail out there. Go and check some of the forums out, for instance. But I thought it would be good and worthwhile just to offload some of the experience that I've got with the 2 types that I use, just to give you a kind of heads up on that. So, Type 17, this is an SR17 torch. To be fair, it came with the box, out of the box with the machine I bought, and is a great all-round TIG torch. It does everything I need it for. It is got flexible heads to it, all that kind of good stuff. Button press, so no foot pedal, but it has its limitations. And the limitations for me, I do a lot of work on the bench, and it is quite a weighty, heavy, bulky torch, and for the very light gauge material I use, it is a bit too much for what I need it for. When you're starting to learn as well, you need to get your hand in certain positions, and you've got to always worry about this button. Also, it's got no modulation, so whatever you set your dial to is what you're going to get when you press that button, and that's predominantly the reason why I changed over from a 17 to a 9. So this is made by CK. This is a CK9, and I'm really glad that I made the change, because I think for me this has been one of the biggest changes or step ups in my welding output that I've made. But it's only been 6 months or so since I made the change, but fantastic, really good bit of kit. Capability wise, 150 amp for the 17, 125 amp for the 9. You can get a little bit more out of it, but it does get a bit warm. But, and I guess this is where the but comes in, very expensive to change between what comes out of the box to changing your setup to a torch and foot pedal arrangement. But the benefits are pretty significant. It is like writing a story on a bit of paper with a pen. You know, it is just so dexterous. You can do everything with it. Lighter gauge material for me, so really, really good. Super light, weld with it all day, no problem at all. Don't get a sore hand, all that kind of good stuff. Plus the modulation I get out of the foot pedal means that it's a dial in and forget about it. I set mine at 120 amps and just modulate through the pedal. So if I need more amperage, just flat stick it, the pedal, and if I need less amperage in the weld, just back that off a bit. But it means you can get super precise with the weld pool, and all you're doing is concentrating on welding. And that's the beauty, is that you don't have to worry about anything else going on with your hand position, and you can just concentrate. And I really like that about this. So I was mentioning you've got to change things. So you've got to change your ceramics, your collets, the head, flex, foot pedal, expensive. Good couple of £100 plus to change over. I did justify it to myself. I'm not sure I justified it to the wife, but don't tell her. But essentially, I think it's the biggest change I've made, and I'm delighted that I've made that change, because my welding has definitely improved because of it. But I'm not saying this is an absolute must. You can do everything I do with that torch, and I use it regularly for the stuff that's out of position for sure. In my top 3 tips, this would be in there, and that is TIG wire and TIG wire size. ER70S2 is the wire of choice for me for doing steel. It is triple deoxidized, and it is fantastic. It goes in like butter. It is brilliant. Go get some of this stuff, but more importantly, get some different sizes. I have 3 different sizes in the workshop here. A 1 mil, a 1.6 mil, and a 2.4 mil. A quick rule of thumb that I've picked up is try and match your wire to the thinnest gauge material that you're trying to weld as a rule of thumb to start off with, and it gives you a basis to jump off and then get a preference of what you like. Some like it a little bit thicker and so on. But I'll give you an example. When I started off with quite thin gauge material. Don't do that. When you're starting to weld, get 3 mil plate or whatever it is, and start welding with that, and with a 2.4 mil or a 1.6 mil, probably a 1.6 mil actually. But in the early days, I was doing lighter gauge material, 1.6 mil sheet, 1 mil sheet, using a 2.4. The reason why, pal of mine had a Buckshee tube and gave it to me as a present, and I persevered with it. But what you're doing there is you're putting too much heat into the base material to melt your weld wire, and as you go in, you get this horrible, flat, horrible looking weld, and I couldn't work it out. I thought I was putting too much amperage in, or playing with settings or gas, but it wasn't. All down to the wire. And equally so, when you're doing a sort of 3 mil plate, no point in using a 1 mil rod, because you're going to be just trying to blaze this stuff in, and it'll be balling up and it'll be going everywhere, and it's just horrible. So top tip, definitely go get yourself some different size wires. Go play with different material grades, and I'm sure you'll agree at the end of it that matching up your wire to your material really does improve the weld that you produce at the end of the day. So on to the next thing. Prep. I can't say it enough. It's a religion of mine, and one thing I've learnt by bitter experience is essentially the less you prep, the worse your weld will be, and conversely, the more prep you put in, the better the weld will be. I tend to work with flat bars and sheet metal. Now the sheets tend to be cold rolled, so you don't get this mill scale. Bars and things like that tend to be hot rolled, and through the process they leave back this mill scale. Now this is this black, horrible, scaly surface, very difficult to get back to a shiny metal, and that's what you're looking for to weld off. You shouldn't be trying to weld rust or mill scale stuff. It's just a no-go. I use, you know, a little grinder with a flapper wheel to shape and mold material, you know, putting edges on things, that kind of thing. But it's not; these things are not great for surface prep, because you're removing material, you're removing the base material from that, and it leaves pretty big sort of scoring marks on there. And the top tips that I will give you in this video is these things. Really cheap to get a hold of, and these are non-woven paint prep wheels. They're like honeycomb. I don't know whether you can pick that up at all, but they are super sort of soft. You think that this isn't going to do anything, but it does a lot. It removes mill scale, it removes surface rust, and it doesn't do the same damage as a flapper wheel does, for instance, and is really, really, really useful. So, really good top tip. Acetone, I use it for the final wipe down, degreasing of the material. I'll give you, I'll turn the camera on, I'll do a little bit of a demonstration just now, but I'll let you make your own mind up whether you need to do that or not at the end. So let's get in that. So just taking the wheel as it is with just some light rust, just to show you how that comes off, really quick and simple, not into this at all, but the disc gives a really good finish to it, as you can see there, nice and shiny. We're on to the flat bar, which has this horrible mill scale all over it. This is by far the worst one I've seen for a while, but the disc just makes short shrift of it, and a couple of seconds later and you're back to that shiny base metal that you want to weld from. Similarly, this is more of a traditional mill scale that you see, but this comes off even easier, and like I say, this disc just does the business. So really nice and shiny material, or that's how you would think of it, but I'm just going to show for demonstrations, taking a white bit of cloth here. Obviously you can see that it's nice and shiny, but taking some acetone, just dampening that down, and then rubbing over the top of the material, you'll see from here that, oh my goodness, look at that. That is absolutely minging, dirty as hell, and that's going in your weld. So the cleaner you can make stuff, prep, the better your weld's going to be. So we're in the home straight now, you'll be glad to know. But just on to the last sort of section here. Welding masks, this is kind of like an industry norm kind of mask. I started with this mask, and to be fair, it will do everything that you will ever need it to do. However, it has quite a lot of limitations. Some people say, oh well, you're a bit posh to nod, so you go with an auto darkening one. For me, moving from this to that was a no-brainer, an absolute no-brainer at all. The reason why is that this is relatively cheap, but you have to don it, obviously, get yourself into a weld position, and then either do a load of that, and as you do this, your hand can move, or you're flipping the visor up and down, so you've got a TIG wire to find and it just becomes a little bit cumbersome when you've got the great option of jumping online and getting yourself an auto darkening welding mask. They don't cost very much, and I got it on eBay, and it was £18, I think, so really cheap, and does everything that I need it, which is perfect. You can see through the visor. As soon as you make that arc, darkens up to the right standard, and you get on with your welding. It's great. It's got some adjustment on it for the side here, for the sort of darkness and things like that when it comes in, so you can tune it to exactly how you like it. And the best thing of all is that if it breaks, go buy another one. It's not that expensive to go and do. So this would be the third of my top 3 tips: is go buy yourself a mask with an auto darkening screen. I've not needed to go to the sort of next level up, which is sort of like a recognised make, maybe, with £100 investment in there. I don't do enough welding for that, but that is perfect for me. Yes, I've come to that time of my life where I am needing to get some reading glasses to do computer work, PC work and things like that. However, I don't want to take my very nice reading glasses or my PC glasses into my workshop. So I got these. This has probably given me the best advantage in my welding in the last 6 months than anything else put together, I think. If you've got 20/20 vision, well, you don't need these, but these are magnifying non-prescription glasses. You can get them in any supermarket or pharmacy, and transforms my welding, purely because I can see the weld pool in great detail. These are 1.5 magnification. You get them from 1.25, I think, all the way through to like 3 or whatever that looks like. Underneath the mask, lids on, and it is fantastic. So if you are needing glasses or you had glasses, go try some of these out. They're really cheap, and again, same with the mask. If I sit on these, grind through them, whatever that is, buy a new pair, dead easy. So the final bit of the jigsaw for me is all about weld position, and I'm not talking about the sort of standards within weld positions for when you're going for a welding exam or anything like that. I'm just talking about getting yourself in a decent position to weld. I obviously have a weld bench. This was my very first project that I did in my welding, and has been invaluable. So always work from a solid base. I know this is in a workshop environment, and you might have something different, but get yourself a solid base, something that's metal potentially, that you don't need to clamp onto the pieces itself. I don't need to. The whole table is metal on metal, and I get the earth through that. A tip is one of these. It's a pedestal drill vise. You can pick them up relatively cheap. They're not too expensive, and what that allows you to do is, obviously it's got a vise on it, it's a stable base, it's obviously metal, and you can really move it about, get it in all sorts of positions. It's got some bolt holes as well, so I can do stuff with that if I need to, but this is really handy, and I'll show you that in a minute. When you start welding, you want to make it as easy as possible for you to make a pass. Forget about trying to get into uphill fillet welding or anything like that, anything exotic. Start with the basics, and that is either a butt weld or a lap joint, and I've got a little lap joint here, and all that is essentially is taking 2 pieces of metal, overlapping them and making the pass down the lap joint. And to be fair, that is the best way that I learnt anyway, because you get obviously two sides for the price of one. It's quite handy to go and learn doing a lap joint. The next one up really is some kind of fillet weld, but I urge you to try and think about this in a different way. If you are going to do a fillet weld and you are going to continue to go down the actual fillet weld, when you're learning, make it as easy as possible to make that pass. And that's where this comes in. That, for me, if I make it the right angle by just simply doing that, now I've got a finger base to go from, and also it is on the flat, so my shield gas is completely shrouded all the way into that line. Always try and make your welding as easy as possible. Obviously I'm at the wrong height now. I would take my seat up and I would get something else involved. And that something else is this little bad boy here. It's a piece of angle iron, or angle plate, just a 90 degree with a smaller section and a larger section. And what that allows me to do is get this into a position. I've buffed out the edges here, it's nice and smooth. And what that allows me to do is get my finger position onto the edge here, hold my torch in exactly the right, get my arc length exactly right, and then all I'm doing is making a very smooth pass all the way along. And what this does is, I don't know whether this is going to be picked up in the camera, I'm going to have to come out of position a little bit, but essentially if you were to make this pass, for instance, I would be holding my finger in that line, and then I don't have to worry about it because this is matched to that. So all I'm doing is making this my scribe for my finger, and all I'm doing then is just concentrating, dabbing. That's all I've got to do. Burn it through. I know I'm going to be nice and square and straight. Fantastic. So I picked this out of a scrap bin at my local metal merchant. He allowed me to go and have a quick rake, and I pulled out a load of stuff, some angle iron, some sort of I-beams and bits and pieces, and they're invaluable. Just pick them up, and really go and get after that. So weld position is getting yourself in that position to be able to weld. Another tip is try and practice your pass. So if you were to make this pass, I know there's nothing here, but make a dry run before striking that arc. And I'll tell you, think of a professional golfer if you see him on TV. You will not see a professional golfer stand up to a ball and whack it down the fairway. What they'll do is they'll make a club choice, speak to their caddy maybe, then they'll go to the ball, address it, step back, take a few practice swings. Once they're all happy, step up to it and bang it down the fairway. Same principle applies here. What you're doing is you're making this dry run to make sure that your hand position is correct, your arc length would be perfect, and that you can get your wire into all the angles that you want to make. So making that pass, yep, I think I'm happy there. No, I need a little adjustment in here as I come round. Maybe there's a corner piece that you need to make an angle into. So I'm going to come to here, make the corner cut, boom. And then you go back to the start, and then you're away welding. And that's it, guys. That's everything that I can offer up to you as newbies or intermediates, out of my brain, things that I've learnt, some tips along the way, and there's a couple of people that I probably should take a shout out to. If you want some more technical detail, I know I haven't been particularly technical in this, but what I wanted to do was just offer up my knowledge share. If it hasn't cut it for you and you need some more information, there's two places that I would urge you to go and take a look at. Mr. TIG over at weld.com. He does a series called TIG Time, some great information in there. My personal choice is Jody over at weldingtipsandtricks.com. He has everything that I need to do with the technical aspects, from wire choices to amperage settings to exotic materials, all that kind of good stuff. So go check those guys out. Thanks a lot for watching. I really appreciate the support, and please do leave me a message if I've got any of this wrong, for instance, and also if you've got any of the good ideas that you're potentially doing in your workshops that would help me learn that a bit quicker as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you again.